Kia ora everyone and welcome back to Civ 5. In today's video I'm going to cover happiness and unhappiness. We're going to talk about the effects and impacts that happiness has on an empire, and also the negative drawbacks of unhappiness. I'm also going to take you through some subtle differences between local happiness versus global happiness, and some different ways that you can sort of earn happiness and make sure that your empire is happy and growing. If somebody can keep a counter of how many times I say the word happy in this video and post it in the comments below, I'll pin you as the top comment, because I am absolutely not counting it. Anyway, let's crack into it. Actually, one other quick thing. I will cover Golden Ages slightly, but I intend to make them their own video. So keep your eye out in the description below, because once the Golden Age video is out, I'll link it down there. Anyway, let's jump in and talk about happiness. So in the top left of your screen, you'll see a happiness icon. That is the happiness level of your empire. In this case, you can see it is 3. Now, positive happiness means your empire is happy. If your happiness is negative, you'll be unhappy. If we take a closer look up the top left here, you can see a breakdown of how I'm earning it. So I'm receiving 28 from all sources. Each luxury, in this case marble, spices, and wine, will provide 4 global happiness. Only 1 copy of each luxury will provide happiness, however. So if you have more than 1 marble, you're not going to get 8 happiness. You will only get 4. I'm getting 6 from local happiness, which we'll cover shortly, nothing from policies or buildings, 1 from discovering a natural wonder, and 9 from the difficulty level. I believe this is the standard difficulty 4. My empire is also generating 25 units of unhappiness. That's 9 from the number of cities. I have 3 cities, that's 3 per city. 12, or just over 12, from my population, so that's just the size of the empire. And 3.8 from specialist workers, who I covered in another video, so have a look at the channel if you want to learn more about specialists. Overall, my happiness is positive. And so, what does that mean, you might be wondering? Well, a positive happiness allows an empire to continue to grow. So you can see here that this city, in 2 turns, a new citizen will be born. Happiness is also important for adding toward that Golden Age counter, which is up here in the top left. Again, I will cover that in a separate video, but just know that Golden Ages are good things, and any extra happiness you have left over each turn is added up and it accumulates into this running total. And once the running total reaches its target, in this case 510, a Golden Age occurs, and your empire receives those bonuses. Okay, so those are the benefits of happiness. What happens if you're unhappy? Well, if this number here drops into the red, these cities will basically not grow. So if your empire is unhappy, your cities and the empire as a whole will grow at 1/4 of the speed. It's very slow. Production in gold will be reduced by 2% per unit of unhappiness. And your military units, like this guy here, will receive -2% combat strength per unit of happiness. At -10 unhappiness, your empire will not grow at all, and rebels will spawn. Rebels, basically barbarians, like this. So rebel units, barbarians, will spawn around your cities. Now that's really bad, because it can lead into a downward spiral. Right, so if you picture this unit here, let's say it was a rebel and it spawned outside my city, it could then come here and pillage my luxury resources. If it pillages my luxuries, which are generating me happiness, as we discussed at the start of the video, all of a sudden my happiness goes even lower, therefore my unhappiness goes even higher, and you can get stuck in a downward spiral. So it's really important. You can deal with a little bit of unhappiness, but you can't deal with it once it gets sort of past -10. You really need to focus it down at that point. It should be your top priority. Now, there is one other key concept of happiness that I would like to discuss in this video before giving out some final tips and tricks for increasing happiness. And that is the difference between local and global happiness. Global happiness, which is the happiness of your whole empire, is displayed up there in the top left. However, each city can produce local happiness. How, you might ask? Well, it's generally produced through buildings. So if you have a look at Warsaw here, over on the left-hand side of the screen, you see that I can build a zoo. A zoo provides +2 happiness to the city. There are other happiness-generating buildings as well that you can sort of progress through, such as the circus and others. They all tend to provide somewhere between +1 and +3 happiness. Some of the religious buildings can provide happiness as well. They can be good ones. But in general, this is how you generate local happiness. And I want you to really have a look down at the bottom left here at this tooltip, because there's something really important here. It cannot provide more happiness than there are number of citizens in a city. And the city must have a coliseum before you can build a zoo. The coliseum is the precursor to the zoo. But fundamentally, the important part here is that it cannot provide more happiness than there are citizens in a city. So, this population size of Warsaw is 7. In 2 turns it'll be 8, but at the moment it's 7. That is the number of citizens in the city. Warsaw cannot produce more than 7 local happiness, regardless of how many buildings I have that are producing happiness. So I'll say that one more time. A city is capped at its population size, in this case 7, for how much local happiness it can produce. In this case, it would be 7. As the city grows, size 8, size 9, size 10, it can pick up those benefits. So I can build a zoo and maybe not receive any happiness from it right now, but once Warsaw grows to a size 9 city, I'll get those 2 happiness. So you can keep building those buildings to ensure that your cities produce enough local happiness to counteract the unhappiness that is being generated by population. You can see across my empire, I'm losing 12.35 happiness because of the number of citizens I have. So that's a really important distinction, that local happiness is limited by population size. You cannot earn more happiness in a city than you have citizens, which kind of makes sense intuitively. Global happiness, on the other hand, is happiness generated not necessarily by specific buildings within a city, not generated locally, but generated at a wider level. It's things like, as I discussed, luxury resources, regardless of what city they're in. They're not limited by local happiness. They are global luxury resources that are shared across the empire. You can trade with other civilizations to pick up luxuries you don't have, particularly if you have duplicates. You can trade a duplicate for something new. And then other ways to generate global happiness include wonders. So there are certain wonders in the game that will produce global happiness. You can see the Circus Maximus from having a Colosseum in all cities produces +5 happiness. And there are other larger, more significant wonders that you can build throughout the game that will produce happiness too. Also, city-states, another great way to pick up happiness. If you become their ally, you gain access to their resources. And if they have luxuries that you don't have, there's some free happiness. And then finally, there are also some cultural policies that will unlock happiness across your empire or reduce unhappiness. So, for example, within the Liberty Tree, you can see +1 happiness is generated for each city you own connected to the capital, and -5% unhappiness from citizens in your normal cities. And so that -5% is already being applied to me, and that's why my unhappiness is being generated at sort of weird numbers, right? They're not exact numbers, it's 12.35, because there's multipliers that are reducing my unhappiness. And without those, my empire would actually be unhappy. So they're really important, and I would really encourage you to have a look through the tree and figure out, you know, what happiness or unhappiness generating policies are going to be right for me. The other one at the end of the tradition tree is also very good. +1 gold and -1 unhappiness for every 2 citizens in the capital. So that will allow you to grow your capital very large. You can grow this one city quite high and not really face a lot of the unhappiness penalties that would be normally placed on you for having so many citizens in a city. That probably wraps up today's video and discussion about how happiness and unhappiness work in Civilization 5. As I said, over the coming weeks or days I will produce a follow-up, sort of a part 2, where I'll delve into this mechanic up here, the Golden Age. And I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to harness Golden Ages. I'll take you through how they work specifically and the kind of benefits that you can draw. Other than that, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching today's Civ 5 tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please do like the video, and why not subscribe and join our growing community. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.